Hello and welcome to Turning Point Tactics. On this episode, we're talking about the recently revealed World Championship of Warhammer rules update for Killteam, which is essentially a foreshadowing of the balance update that's coming out for us in October. So I'm going to go through what the changes are listed there. I don't think there's going to be any significant changes between now and when they're released on the app, and I expect them to be released on the app ahead of the World Championship of Warhammer. So therefore, it's a good opportunity for us to talk through what those changes are and what they mean for you as a Killteam player. And the meta as a whole. So, with that said, let's get into it.
Hello and welcome to Turning Point Tactics, the competitive Killteam 40k YouTube channel focused on giving you the strategies and tactics to seize initiative every turning point. I'm your host Ryan, and I'm here to help give you the tips and tricks to elevate every part of your Killteam experience. So no matter if you're a casual or a competitive player, there should be something here for you. If you're interested in supporting the channel, there's a few ways you can go about doing so. You can join the Patreon, where you get access to members only Discord, Patreon priority questions, early access to content, exclusive content, and tournament awards. Or if you find yourself buying Killteam goodies or hobby supplies, you can use one of our affiliate links in the description below, or discount codes with Crossfire Games and GG Prints. We're always keen to hear your thoughts and feedback, so don't leave that comment box empty. Let us know what you think. Once again, thanks for your support, and with all that said, let's get into it.
Okay, so you've probably already seen this. What came out recently is the World Championship of Warhammer rules update, which essentially is a rules update sent for Killteam players attending the World Championships of Warhammer. So this is the sort of overview that they've hosted, explaining their sort of their logic and their reasoning. And essentially they want to make sure that the players have access to the balanced data slate at an appropriate time so they can properly prepare, select the right kill team, all that sort of stuff, and make sure they're playing with the right rules and therefore don't get rules wrong when they're playing at the World Championships. Particularly if you're on stream or something like that and your team receives a nerf the week prior and you've been playing 6 months or a year, or like up to this point of playing a rule a certain way, and suddenly it doesn't work that way anymore. It could be easy for you to then make that mistake. And then we don't people just don't want to have that hassle. So it's just giving people the opportunity to basically learn these rules. So I'm going to go through the various changes and talk about them and how impactful I think they are to the meta. So we've got a few errata bits as well, which is useful to see. So the Killzone Volkus large ruin has had this bit added, which is actually pretty impactful to the way the game plays, right? So add the following text at the end of the third bullet point: the door is accessible and heavy terrain for the purposes of control range. Ignore the door when determining visibility. So this is really cool because previously the stronghold doors had this ruling, but the ruin doors didn't, which meant that you played around them in a very confusing way, right? So essentially you could charge a model that was on the opposite side of a stronghold door, but you couldn't charge a model that was on the opposite side of a ruin door, but you could move dash up to the door and hatchway fight them, which was clearly quite confusing. So this just now means that they play the same way. So if the model on the opposite side of the door is not within 1 inch, or whatever the thickness of the terrain is, to be able to determine that, you can still move dash against the door and then hatchway fight them. But if they are within 1 inch, you'll have to charge against the door. So this does affect certain teams in certain ways, because potentially where you staged previously, you'd be able to be within 9 inches of a doorway. Now you probably want to be within 8 inches of a doorway to be able to achieve the same sort of effect to charge someone on the opposite side. So interesting change there. Note that it also means that if you charge someone, you will count as being in engage range, in control range, and therefore you won't be able to be shooting from that position because you'll be in control range. So there's some interesting mechanics to this when it comes to that. So I'm that's the way that I'm pretty sure it's played. So unless people tell me differently, that's the change at the top there, which is good because it means they both play the same. Okay, ladders. Ladders have got a bit of a change as well. So this is a rata, but it's not necessarily a rata. It's kind of like a balancy change, or just like clarifying how they're played. So the first bit is ladders are insignificant and exposed, so you can essentially just go straight over them, move through them, and that sort of stuff. So don't worry about them for that sort of instance, and they're not going to give you any cover. So that's the first bit. And then they've got rid of all the start bit. So now it simply reads: once per action, whenever an operative is climbing the terrain feature a ladder is placed against, treat the vertical distance as 1 inch. if the ladder is within that operative's control range during that entire climb. So you now don't climb the ladder, but you're going to climb the terrain feature. And if that ladder is within 1 inch of you, you then treat the whole thing as 1 inch. So you can't just like climb straight to the top, if that makes sense. You're gonna climb the ladder and then climb beyond. Cool. So it's going to work, I guess, subtly differently on the really tall climbs. You're not able to get up there quite as easily. You'll have to climb to one level and then climb the rest as a separate climb. Interesting to note. Cool. The portable barricade, they've just added accept the feet which are insignificant and exposed. So essentially you can, previously, I guess you technically had to like move back slightly away from the feet to then go round. Now you can just move directly sideways, ignoring those feet, not paying a climb penalty, and then move around. So it lets you get around the portable barricade a little bit easier, which is always good. Now this is a big change, is a smoke grenade, and this affects loads of teams. And I think from the commentary I've seen thus far, this change is maybe a little bit underplayed, because smoke grenades are pretty common, particularly in elite teams that want to increase their durability against shooting teams. And now, like, one of the key parts of that durability of basically denying piercing 1 is gone. So anyway, I'll read it out. So in addition, whenever an operative is shooting an enemy operative wholly within an area of smoke, weapons with the piercing 2 or piercing crits 2 weapon rule have the piercing 1 or piercing crits 1 weapon rule instead, respectively instead. So this is I think a good nerf to smoke grenades. I do think they're potentially too strong. Removing piercing didn't necessarily make sense. I actually think, like, if I was to refine this further, I think just making whatever it is go to piercing crits would probably have been enough. Because I guess the logic is, like, if you're trying to see someone in smoke and shoot them, if you ignore obscurity, so you've got some sort of advanced HUD and all that sort of stuff, and you're just shooting through the smoke freely, your piercing is still just as effective, right? Like, if you're getting hit in the chest by a melter gun, you're still getting hit in the chest. The density of the smoke isn't going to stop you from taking the damage. But now it's piercing 1 instead of piercing 2, which is better than it was before, because before it was just you lost all piercing, which was pretty wild. So interesting things that this now stacks with. The Aegis, or any sort of model that reduces piercing by 1 themselves, are now going to reduce the piercing 2 to piercing 1, then ignore the piercing 1. So that's kind of interesting. But for most models, piercing 1 is now going to be way more impactful, which I think for a lot of teams is really good. So teams, like, there's so many teams that just have essentially piercing 1 as good as it gets for them. And when you just say that's not going to be a thing for you, it really hurts them. Like, Vespid are a great example of just being able to throw a smoke grenade and just turn off their piercing 1 is pretty powerful, right? Particularly as they're also obscured, so then you're ignoring obscurity, and so they get the lethal 5, so they get the piercing 1, they're losing an attack dice, and it's brutal. So like, that's I think a good change, which is going to help Hordes teams out more, and shooting Hordes in particular. So this is a nerf to all elite teams. Like, DeathWatch, I think, play around smoke grenades a lot. Phobos play around smoke grenades a lot. We don't know what the new teams are like, but if the new Wolf Scouts is like old Phobos and they get 4 smoke grenades, then they would obviously be affected by this, but maybe they're not like that. But all elites are going to probably struggle with this, or unless you don't care for smoke grenades. I guess Nemesis Claw usually prefer charging into melee and using their chain snares in a different method, which have got buffed in a separate way. So, but I think this is actually one of the big changes, is the change to smoke grenades, in my opinion. So really interesting to see they've adjusted that. Okay, next up is Angels of Death. So Angels of Death kind of got like kicked when they were down a little bit in the last balanced data slate. So now they've received some changes, which is cool. So we'll start with the Space Marine Captain. Effectively, The only change is you can use the combat doctrine strategy deploy when you activate a friendly Angel Death operative. If this operative is in the kill zone and isn't within control range of any operatives, pay its CP cost as normal. Note that you cannot do so if you've already used this deploy during the turning point. So I was trying to think when this would be useful, and I'm not like, I guess the time it would make sense is if you like lose initiative, and you want to see where your opponent moves first to determine if you want to have Devastator, tactical, or melee. Like, I think that's kind of its use. Yeah, I think it'd be better if if you could change it. I think like if you could change the combat doctrine, then that would be a buff. But it doesn't really feel like it's a buff. I'm a bit confused by that one. Like, is there any Angels of Death players out there that are telling me that there's something I'm significantly missing here? Because to me it feels like you essentially just wait to see what your opponent does and then say, actually, I'm going to use the Devastator Doctrine because you ran away from me, or oh, you came and got within melee range, so I'm going to use Assault Doctrine instead, something like this. But most of the time, I don't think you were ever really doing that. It kind of became apparent. Maybe it's just me. There are, though, changes to the faction rules, the chapter tactics, which are more significant. So Resolute has had a bit added to it, right? So you're not affected by enemy shock weapon rule. I'm trying to think who has like spam shock. Personally, I don't think it's going to be that impactful. I mean, it's nice. It's like if you're taking that anyway, sure. Generally, Resolute is something I think you flip into. You don't take it as standard because unless your opponent is applying a lot of stun just as is, then you don't know when they're going to have the APL modifiers. So it's more useful to wait until they've thrown stun grenades or done whatever they need to do, and you spend a CP, and then you go, "Yep, cool. I now have the ability to ignore all of those things." So yeah, personally, nice. It's a little bit better, but I personally believe it was already a niche application that you were having in the background, and now it's got a little bit better. But I don't think you're going to be able to take it as a primary, in my personal opinion. I might be wrong. But Hardy has had a significant buff, in my opinion. So Hardy, for those who don't know, gives you critical fives when you're rolling defense dice, which is nice, right? So against like elven teams and that sort of stuff, having access to crit 5 saves is a really nice buff. But it wasn't like all the time. It was like, okay, I'm better against shooting. Comes up sometimes, but this is actually, I think, is useful a lot of the time. So if you're running like a shooting Angel's Death team, whenever this operative is retaliating, the first time an attack dice inflicts normal damage of 3 or more on this operative during the sequence, the dice inflicts 1 less damage on it. It's just reducing the amount of incoming damage. It might mean that you exist in a break point where you don't necessarily die. The times when this is useful is if you're fighting someone that's got like power weapons, and they might hit you for like a crit, then they hit you for like 2 normals, and that would be enough to kill you. But because you now reduce it by 1, you're then going to be 1 wound off dying. So I think it's worth it. Note that it only works when you're retaliating. So whenever someone's fighting you, that's when it procs, as opposed to when you're fighting other people. So it is somewhat niche, but it's a good buff. It's a good buff. It's going to help you versus melee teams. It means that Hardy rule as a total gives you buff against shooting. It gives you buff when someone tries to hurt you in melee. It makes your team more durable. They probably need that, particularly now that smoke grenades have been hit, in my opinion. Next up is Sharpshooter. So essentially what it was before is if you don't perform a charge, a fallback, or a reposition, you got severe. And now if you don't do those things, you gain accurate 1 and severe. Nice buff. I mean, it's good. Accurate 1 is pretty decent. The issue they had before with severe is a lot of the time you're taking the Stalker bolt rifles, where if you dash you gain lethal 5. So it was kind of, like you're kind of getting it anyway. I mean, obviously there was a chance where you didn't, but so if you're taking this now, it's also giving you a bit of an accuracy buff as well. But that means you're only over like dashing. So it's not too good if you're going to be moving up and trying to do more than that. The next one is Siege Specialist, which is whenever this operative is fighting or retaliating, enemy operatives cannot assist. So it gives you Saturate as the core rule, and then now this as well. So interestingly, as I said, similar to Hardy, it's now giving you a benefit to your shooting and giving you a benefit to your melee or your counter melee if people are going to like try and dogpile you with models. Which can be useful against certain teams. Like, this is really useful against teams like Chaos Cult. They like to do like GA2 charges. They like to try and give themselves the benefits to hit and that sort of stuff. So just being able to reduce that is quite a nice little buff. Although I'm not convinced that it's necessarily going to be game breaking. I think most of the time, I'm trying to think what you would play now. I think maybe like Mobile and Hardy is like the way to go if you want to run like a shooting team, so that you can essentially fall back, shoot people that you want to shoot, and when they charge you, you're potentially living, so that you can fall back and shoot again. Is kind of the logic that I think might make sense there, in my opinion. But what's your guys' thoughts? Has this changed anything for you? Like, are these now like auto includes? Personally, I think Resolute is too situational to take as a primary, and I think this is a nice buff to gain accurate one, but you're not necessarily getting it all the time because you want to be moving and shooting. So unless people are operating close to you, then it doesn't help too much. What I think this about Angels of Death as a whole. I'm going to do a tier list hopefully with some of the UK players in a bit, but generically this I don't think is enough. Like I think Angels of Death is still going to be lagging behind a little bit. I just kind of like, okay, so a few things. If the combat doctrine was it cost you 0 CP, then the captain obviously is an auto include, and it would be cool that you could choose that during the turning point, or if it let you change your doctrine during the turning point. So you say, actually, I now need to be on, this instead. Which I mean, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just trying to think. Like, is it any of these? They already have that. So. I don't see the use. I really don't see the use. Maybe that's just me being harsh. So you can activate him, turn on the doctrine that you've paid for, and you can then just use the free firefight point to change it anyway. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the benefit of that is. I must be missing something here, because they've got the adjust doctrine firefight point. And then they have the combat doctrine already. I mean, I was never really using the adjust doctrine firefight point anyway, to be honest, because I think I just didn't think it was worth it. I think most of the time what you're like. Most of the time what you're doing. So spending a CP to gain back, like, you have to have like a perfect split of models where you want 3 of them charging into melee or something, or 3 of them shooting and then 3 charging into melee, and therefore you sequence your turning point perfectly to be able to achieve that. To get the maximum value out of spending that CP. So I just don't know what that's doing as an ability. Maybe that sounds harsh. Yeah, anyway, cool. I don't think it's going to help. I still think they're going to be weak because I don't think they are competing against the other elite factions particularly well, and they've got a whole bunch of hunters out there that are going to do well against them. And not just that, but all of the other teams that receive buffs are also going to still perform really well against this team. So yeah, I think Angels of Death. I think they need more help, in my opinion. But it's good to see them getting some love. Okay, next, Blades of Khaine. So Blades of Khaine were doing pretty well, for those who don't know, and they received some nerfs. So the first one is the attack stat of the Shriek that kills has been taken down to 5. So for those that don't know, that's the Howling Banshee technique, which is like the Seek Light Stun 6-inch thing that's like 1-2 damage or something, and it has stun, does whatever, and I think it was 6 attacks. I think it had Torrent 1 as well for some reason, which meant that on ITD it was lethal 5, and it did a somewhat silly amount of damage for what it should be, which is essentially a tech item to try and stun someone. So that's now been toned down a little bit to attacks 5, which is fine, makes sense. And then the other change is to the strike and fallback technique that a lot of the Eldar have, which is the key bit now is if the enemy isn't incapacitated. So what used to happen before is if you killed someone, you could then do a free dash and then shoot someone else or move somewhere, do what you need to do, or get on an objective, do a mission action, whatever it was. Now it's only if that model isn't dead. So you have to strike and fall back from a live model, which means things like, because there was also a bit of debate about can you dash outside of a chain snare model or something like this. That's now gone. It's a fallback only, so you can't get away from the chain snares or the manacles or whatever. They're always going to proc. So this, I don't think really changes anything. The shriek that kills is slightly less potent, but I don't think you're going to notice it that much. And this is kind of like against certain matchups it comes up a little bit, and other than that it won't be impactful at all. So I think Blades of Khaine are going to stay exactly as they are. The interesting thing for them, I guess, is that some of the other teams that got nerfed have got nerfed in a more impactful way, and therefore actually they're in a better place. And I don't think any of the teams that have got buffed are too problematic for them. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think all the teams that they struggled with have been hit with nerfs. So I think it's a good day to be a Blades of Khaine player, in my opinion. But for the Blades of Khaine players, what are you thinking? Like, is this true? Is it good? Is it bad? I think it's probably good for you, but maybe you're telling me that actually you were killing so many people with the shriek that kills that now you can't go on with that change. Or maybe this change is more impactful than I think it is. Cool, so that's that. Next up we have the Blooded getting some changes, which I'm actually like quite surprised about, because they've pretty much been like the consistently balanced team for, well, I say their entire release. I don't think they've ever been a season where they've been particularly like good or like bad. Like they've always been just sort of solid, like right in the middle. They've never been oppressive. They've never been bad either. So the change for this is the Chieftain Optive. It used to be whenever this Optive has one of your blooded tokens and is wholly within your opponent's territory, treat it as under the gaze of the gods. Now, whenever this Optive has one of your blooded tokens or is wholly within your opponent's territory, it treats it as under the gaze of the gods. So that's really cool, because you essentially get like a double benefit. So if you give him a blooded token and you're running around your half, he's good to go. Or if you just run him into your opponent's territory, he's now going to be amped up and doing more damage with Gaze of the Gods, which is awesome. So it means that you can hand out these blooded tokens a little bit better to other people potentially. You don't have to give it to your chieftain because he's going to get that benefit irrespective, so long as you go and position him in your opponent's territory. So pretty nice change, makes it pretty good. And then the other one is the Enforcer. I'm just going to check to see what the existing one is. So the current one is whenever a blooded optive has been 6 inches optive, you can ignore any change to optive stats from being injured, including its weapon stats. And then, okay. So the only change to this is the main bit now is you can leave the aura and maintain your buff. So it's until the end of the activation, whereas before it was only when you're in the aura ring. So that means that you essentially can place the Enforcer somewhere central, covering 6 guys, then they can go off like bullets or missiles and go do damage, ignoring the fact that they are injured, and ignore the movement and the hit rolls. So that's a nice change. It means that you get a bit more freedom to move forwards and be a bit more aggressive with your blooded models, which is exactly what blooded want to do. So a nice change. I think they are going to stay personally around the 50%. I maybe they'll do a little bit better, noting that some of the teams that they've been struggling against have got nerfed, so potentially they're a little bit better than they are now. but I don't think it'll be too crazy, in my opinion. Brew Brothers, the Icon Ward has had the objective mark control, which was 6 inches before, I believe, down to 4 inches, which is a nice change. It was kind of absurd to be able to put a model in, the centre of the map and cover 2 objectives with an aura. I think having to choose between is fairer, in my opinion. I kind of liked it when icons just sort of controlled the objective they were on, but hey, that's the way of things. I'm going to check one thing and just make sure that for Brew Brothers, it doesn't also affect the other part of their rule, and the answer is no. Cool. So the ability to when you die still shoot people is still within 6. It's just the objective control goes down to 4. So that's pretty good. I don't think it's going to change anything, to be honest. Like, I think they are probably happier that the teams above them have got nerfed. They weren't particularly dependent upon smoke grenades, in my opinion. The rest of the changes aren't huge. They probably can't just double APL on 2 objectives now. They have to just have 1. But I don't think it's going to change much. You'll just put it more towards the centre and then move it onto the opponent's home objective if you get to be able to push that far, in my opinion. So, Brew Brothers, much the same. I don't think that's going to change much. This is the big one, though. This is the big one. Canoptek Circle. So, for those that were sleeping for the last month or so, Canoptek Circle has sort of been dominating with really consistent win rates, really consistent tournament placements. They are, I don't want to say broken, but they're basically broken. They're very, very strong, and stronger than most of the other teams in the game. So they've changed a few things. Firstly, the Obligatory Matrix, you can add 1 to that APL stat to a maximum of 3. So, cool, nice change. Geomancer now isn't getting quite as much efficiency as they had before. This also affects their ability to play the objectives, because one of the things that people, I guess, were forgetting is that they could just move a Geomancer against an elite player. So in that DeathWatch versus Canoptek match, the Geomancer could just move on to one of your objectives and just take it with 4 APL. There's nothing you could do about it. Now they're not going to be able to do that because they go up to a maximum of 3, and they're going to struggle with that APL efficiency as well. So that is a pretty significant change to the way that the team plays, in my opinion. So that's good to see. The next one is the Reanimator operative. Now can't do the heal more than once per turning point. So again, for Hordes teams, this is a significant nerf because it means that when you do your damage, they're going to get to heal 3d3, and when the model activates, a further d3, but that's it. Whereas before, they were healing 3d3, they were getting commanded to heal 3d3, they were then counteracting 3d3, they were getting counteract commanded to heal 3d3, and the model itself was going to heal 3d3 when it activated, just d3, when it activated. Which is clearly a lot of healing, and that meant that potentially you were just not able to kill these really big wound count models, and they were able to pick up kills quite effectively. Yes, I think broadly, these are good changes for Canoptek Circle to just tone them down. And then the Quake weapon attacks again to 5, was 6 before. 1-2 was 1-3 before. It was Blast 2 Stun. I'm trying to think if it had any other keywords. It might have had like Severe on there or something as well, just to be gross. I think that's his melee profile actually. So I'll just quickly check, make sure I'm not lying. Seek Light, Stun, Blast 2, yeah. This is good because essentially 1-3 on ITD with lethal 5 meant that with 6 attacks, like just occasionally you just spiked, and you just ended up getting like a crazy amount of damage through, where you're killing models with something that's supposed to not be a killing effect, and particularly with Seek Light on those maps where you just can't hide because the terrain's not available to you for heavy terrain, so you're forced to go into this. And then you just say, I rolled 3 crits and 2 hits, and you go, oh, that's just like 9 damage. That's just killed someone. Is is wild. Like that was clearly more than like what I think it's supposed to be, is like the floor shakes a little bit. So that's a good change in my opinion. So it just reduces that again, that seek light sort of crit damage, similar to the way that the shriek that kills, that steals, that kills, shriek that kills has been nerfed as well. And then finally the buff for the team, which is the dimensional banishment goes through medic, Fellgor frenzy, and you can't reanimate if you're a Hierotek Circle. So that's pretty huge. Like if you hit the Hierotek Circle player's Cryptek and banish it, that's massive. Like that's going to really hurt how that matchup goes. So like I think now, that particular, I mean, for those that weren't aware, the sort of the ruling previously, that I think community ruling was, medic worked, Fellgor Ravager worked, Goremongers didn't work, and you would still be able to reanimate. Now, clearly, all of those things have changed. So it's now much stronger, and it's the sort of the key weapon of the team, I guess. So for those matchups, this actually is a significant buff to the way the team works. And note as well that you're going to be able to command it to shoot again in those matchups. So you're potentially going to be able to get double kills out of this thing quite effectively. So be careful. Like if you're a team that's reliant on medics, I'm not sure what teams they are, but if you're Fellgor, if you're Hierotek Circle, if you're Goremongers, just be aware that this guy can banish people, and he's pretty effective at it. So yeah, so that is all the nerfs. Oh, sorry, one of the rules commentary. You can't measure through wall terrain. Cool. I think we were all tracking that. I'm pretty sure that's how everyone was playing it on ITD, unless your local community didn't. Overall, quite a few nerfs. An interesting buff that's going to help some of their matchups, but I think these nerfs are going to make it a little less toxic against a lot of players. If you're a horde team, you're really happy to see the fact that you're not going to be dealing with multiple heals at turning point. You're not going to get blasted out of existence for hiding in light terrain, and you're going to enjoy the fact that the Geomancer has slightly less APL efficiency. For elite teams, you're going to enjoy the fact that the APL efficiency is gone from the Geomancer, and the fact that you're not going to have your objective just taken from you, because now they're 3 APL at best. They can't dominate crit up quite as well as they could before. Obviously, they can still contest with their markers and that sort of stuff, so that you still have to go and engage with them. They've still got a lot of strength inherently in the team, but I think that we're now in a better place with these nerfs coming through. How do I think it's going to affect them? I think they're going to go to like 55, 57.5, something like that. I don't think they're going to be. I don't think this doesn't read to me personally as like the team is dead at all. I think it just means that they are just slightly toned down, and some of the more abusive stuff doesn't happen, because realistically, if you were healing 13 D3 in a game, you weren't maximizing the kill potential of your team and that sort of stuff. Whereas realistically, I think people were healing occasionally, maybe twice per turning point, 3 at a push, but they were doing more of the shooting and commanding to shoot and that sort of stuff. Like it's just when it did come up, it was particularly gross, and now that's gone away. DeathWatch Errata. So this, I think, is a good change in my opinion. I don't think it changed the way the team plays too much. I think the smoke grenade change, in my opinion, is way more impactful to DeathWatch than this. But essentially, the changes for the Demolisher operative, you can't stack the damage reduction with the shield that slays ploy. And it's normal and crit damage of 3 or more. Was that always the case? I feel like it was always the case. Or was it 2 before? So they've just essentially changed that. I mean, I should probably know that off by heart, but now I'm doubting myself, so I have to just quickly check to make sure I don't lie to people. It was to a minimum of 2, but now it's, instead of that, it's just normal and crit of 3 or more, which is essentially the same thing. Cool. So you can't double reduce. Nice. Makes perfect sense. This is a fine change. Like I don't think the Demolisher needed it, if I'm honest. Like the way it usually happens is if you get crit like a power sword or something, you could then reduce it by 2. Yeah, sure, they didn't need it. It probably will be impactful actually, because like let's say you get 2 crits in it and what's the 3 crits? Yeah, maybe I don't think it's that impactful. You need to have like a lot of crits with a power sword to kill this guy anyway. Because let's say you get two crits in a hit, you're going to do 5, 5, and 3, and he's going to be alive. So yeah, you need to have like a lot of crit damage. Interestingly, like him fighting himself is now better. Yeah, that's interesting. But most of the time, it's not going to come up. So yeah, fine. This is a good change. The impactful change for me, in my opinion, as a DeathWatch player, smoke grenades, huge. Like this team has a lot of ways to play with smoke, particularly the double counteract. The fact that they have lost the ability to like shoot and smoke and then ignore all piercing is big, right? Because now if your opponent is doing, shooting you with a piercing 2 weapon, they're getting piercing 1, or their piercing 1 weapons are just going straight through, and you're now less durable as a result, which is impactful. Exaction Squad. So DeathWatch, I think are going to do well out of this balanced data slate because of the nerfs that everyone else received, and I don't think this is really a nerf. I think this is a small tweak. So I think they might go down a little bit, but well, I'd say this. So they got nerfed and the smoke grenades got nerfed, which means they would go down a little bit. But actually, all their other matchups broadly have gotten better, so they go up a little bit. There are a few matchups that I think now are like pretty crazy. Maybe go down a little bit again, but so maybe they end up pretty much as they are right now. So like 55-ish%. Just vibing is my opinion, but I might be wrong. Exaction Squad. Lethal 5 and Severe from the Malakator, rather than if it already has Severe, it gains Lethal 5. Nice. This is okay. Like I don't think it matters too much, in my opinion. That's just me. I guess actually, is it? Hang on a sec. It might be useful actually to double check my understanding if it works in melee as well, which I think it does. So if it works in melee and you gain lethal 5, is that going to make people particularly better with the shields? Yeah. Shields gain lethal 5. Maybe that is better. You get severe already, so you're always getting 1 crit, but now you might get 2 crits. I don't know if it really changes much. Like I think this is kind of like a niche. Like, okay, you might get 2 crits rather than 1 crit. Is basically the way in which I read that. So sure. I don't think it changes much, but it's nice, sure. The bit I do think is useful though is the specialty shells, which is up to twice the turning point. So having access to piercing 1, and now that piercing 1 with the removal of smoke grenades, effective piercing 1 is so much more impactful, they've got like a double buff here, right? So they have access to piercing 1 more often, and the counters to piercing 1 are less. So cool. This means that they're going to be better against elites. I guess technically getting the lethal 5 is also another benefit against elites, because you might just spike more crits. I guess like there is a niche here. So against Blades of Khaine, lethal 5 is really useful because you can get around their just a scratch. So against just a scratch teams, lethal 5 is nice. That's the main change, I think. But this is good changes. I think they might head up to like towards the top of the 40% win rate, maybe like 47-ish. Like will they break 50? Maybe they get close. I don't know what it is about Exaction that they feel like they're a little bit slow. They're not massively killy, and the tac ops don't seem to vibe too well with them. Has been my opinion. But these are nice changes. So and they're also going to really enjoy the fact that other teams have been getting nerfs. So overall, this is definitely a win for Exaction Squad. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on with that. Fellgor Ravagers, when they are frenzied, they can't perform unique actions, excluding sweeping blow. So essentially, I'm trying to think what other unique actions they had. It's all of the ones that are like. Just quickly just go on and just see if there's anything that's in here that's like particularly standing out. You can death knell wouldn't be a factor. You can't do the cleaver flurry, I guess. That's a unique action. So sure. You can't do the uncompromising attack. That's actually kind of big. So the Null Sky is going to get nerfed by that. You won't be able to hand out APL buffs, which is kind of impactful, I guess. You won't be able to heal people, also kind of impactful. And that's it. So it's enough, I guess. It's enough. And the other one is you can't use the call the attack rule if your operative has a frenzy token, which is kind of makes sense. So like your guy isn't there giving out orders to the other goats, being like you need to move here, you need to move here if he's clearly in a frenzy. So cool, makes sense. I don't like most of the time. I don't think the Iron Horn was dying that early, and if he was, then like at that point you're probably into the melee anyway. So I don't know how much that comes up. The unique actions I think might actually be the more impactful, because a lot of the unique actions are quite strong and good ways of getting damage out or doing actual things that you weren't necessarily expecting. Like as I said, being able to charge and shoot fight with a frenzied whatever the guy is. I've already forgotten his name. All the names confuse me. With the Null Scar might be impactful. That kind of thing I think is probably more, but it also means that you get a little less movement with the call the attack. So those are changes. The main thing I'd say about these guys is they weren't loving the meta. I think that the effective melee teams that are out there, like Raveners, Deathwatch, who else were the big elite hunters? I put Goremongers. I think is probably like an evenish matchup in my opinion, but maybe I'm wrong. But anyway, like all the elite teams that were going out there with the ability to kill these guys off really quickly or double fight them was painful. Legionaries was a bad matchup for them. Them going out of rotation is probably pretty nice, and I think generally they're going to stay where they are. Or maybe go up a little bit, but I don't think they like playing against Deathwatch, is my opinion, because Deathwatch can double tap them and probably frenzy them with a single shooting action with some of the weapons. Like the Plasma Gun will frenzy pretty effectively, then they can just shoot you again, or they can kill you in melee, and their melee operatives are really good at killing goats with essentially a lot of 4/6 weapons. That's all you need. So. They don't like that matchup, and that's a really popular team in the meta at the moment. So that's what's going to hold them back, in my opinion. Gellerpox Infected. So I got this pointed out to me the other day. This change, which is whenever a friendly Gellerpox Infected Nightmare Hulk operative is fighting, your opponent cannot retain results of 3 as successes. So I was like, I'm not really too sure what this changes. What it changes is that if you have I'll read the Rust emanations now. So, whenever an enemy operative is within control range of a Gellerpox operative, Nightmare Hulk operative worse than the hit stat of the enemy operative by 1. This isn't cumulative being injured. So the reason why I was trying to figure out why it matters is it does impact. Or it makes it easier for hordes to kill hulks. So if you're hitting on 4s, you're in a better place. If you're a Marine team, you're in a worse place. And if you had a Marine team that was able to ignore hit modifiers, this impacts you. So it basically makes, like, also I guess weirdly affects like models that hit on like 2s. So your 3s suddenly become like worse. So it has an interesting way in which it interacts with models. It probably maths out the same against models that hit on 2s and 3s. but significantly helps models that hit on 4s and 5s, which is pretty big. So if you're going in with a butcher or with the demolisher, well, you weren't hitting on 3s anyway. So now you can go with your Hearthkyn intent, and you're not getting that -1, which is kind of big. Interestingly, this is like the slight, I guess, side buff is it doesn't say that it's cumulative with being injured. So if you hit on 2s and then you become injured, you can't hit on 2s anymore, so you hit on 3s, and your 3s don't count, so you get a -2 to hit. So in some niche scenarios, if you're an injured model that hits on 2s, this is more impactful than it was previously, just out of interest. Other than that, I don't know how it's going to affect Gellerpox. As I said, I'm sadly not practicing Gellerpox, and I don't want to lie to you and try and say I understand a team that I don't. I don't see these guys play often. I'd be guessing, but there is I guess some benefit here to just by reading the rules and understanding it, that horde teams will find it easier to kill the Nightmare Hulks in melee. There you go. Goremongers now. So the rake rule has been changed to only work during its activation, which is good because there was also some nonsense, which was because it says that you can use each of these once per activation, and then in the strat phase you could do a charge, and then people were saying because it's not activation you can double rake for as much as you can do with your thing, like nonsense. Now it's just during an activation, and it's only once. So you can't do like a strategic phase, charge, rake someone. You're only able to do it during an activation. So that is enough. That is going to affect people. They've made it so Gory Tenacity goes down to a minimum of 2. Again, this only really helps particularly weak melee teams. So if you were 2 damage anyway, then you're now getting to do 2 damage rather than 1. But for most teams, this is fine. So this helps hordes, I guess, if you have weak melee. And then the next bit is the aspirant, which is once during each of this optive's activations, when it's opted into the fight action, if no one within control of your optives, you can use this rule. If you do, community form a free charge, etc., etc. So it just means that you can't continually ping pong with your aspirants. You just need to you can only ping pong once with your aspirant, which is kind of fine. And then the next bit is the inciter, which is it used to be whenever this option inflicts damage on any octave, you gain a token to hand out blood to people. But now it has to be using its dual auto pistols. So the thing that people used to do is they would shoot someone, gain a blood token, they would charge someone, they would rake them, gain a blood token, they would fight them, gain a blood token, and do all this sort of stuff. Now you can't do that, right? So it's only when you're doing your dual auto pistols, either in shooting or in melee. So you can't do like a rake to be able to get additional bleeding, or use a frag grenade or any other sort of random piece of equipment to be able to do damage against someone and then collect those blood tokens. So quite a few nerfs here. How do I think they're going to get on? Great question. I don't think they like DeathWatch at all. I think DeathWatch are really bad for Goremongers, and they're really popular in the meta at the moment. So, unless like maybe I'm just misunderstanding the matchup, but I've played it a few times now, and it just always felt to be significantly in my favour as DeathWatch. Essentially, they had to charge me in my territory to have a chance of killing me. Even then, they sort of struggled to do the damage to kill a 15 wound Marine, and then I can fall back and probably kill them, or another model can charge in and kill them. And if I get into their territory, the chance of them killing me just like absolutely plummets, and it requires 2 or 3 of them to be able to do the damage to be able to actually get the kill. So I just think that against like those elite matchups, they don't like it. So yeah, maybe I think they can still do well if they just dodge those matchups. I think they're great in team format in a weird way. I still believe that they are massively swingy. I kind of wish that they were less durable and more violent, if that makes sense. I want them to have like almost more rerolls or more attack dice. just because I think that's what they deserve, and then just let them be a bit more, like easier to kill and die. But maybe that's just me. Just want the corn vibes. I think they're still going to be around 50% win rate. I just see them as a general like kill team. They're going to do really well when they dodge their bad matchups, and then they're going to hit the DeathWatch brick wall at some point, and that's what's going to stop their tournament run, in my opinion. But they can do fantastic into some other teams. Like, this is a very polarizing team, because in the same way that DeathWatch are like kryptonite to this team can be kryptonite to others as well. So I can definitely see them being pretty strong. All right, let's moving on then. Hand of the Archon. So they've reverted it back to basically being ceaseless for the power from plain stimulated senses, which makes sense. They've added the light terrain instead of just heavy for denizens of the night. They didn't see that being too impactful, but I guess it's a nice change if you want a bit of extra defensive rerolls. And the Crimson Duelist can perform 2 fight actions during its activation, which is, I believe, a nice change, because before I think it had to do against the same operative, was my understanding of the rule, but let me make sure I haven't lied to you. Yeah, so it used to be you can fight the same person twice. Now they can perform 2 fight actions, so that's a great change. Yeah, I think that's a nice buff. This is a nice buff. This is all generically good little buffs for the team, and some of their more problematic matchups have gone away. So I think they're in a decent place, or better place than they were. I think people are a bit too harsh on Hand of the Archon. I think the issue with them is like, again, it's that momentum that you have to build, and you're trying to push momentum of a team through. And maybe it's just not that there's not going to have that momentum necessarily without using the agents and being able to hand out those blood tokens early on. So if you can get that momentum going, then sure, makes sense. But if not, then hey, it's what it is. Next up is Hearthkyn Salvagers. So they have changed the way grudges work so that you can benefit from your accurate and your grudge, which is nice. That's a good change. I think they got inadvertently nerfed with the change previously, so that's a nice change. The wrought defense, which is if you rolled 1 or less success, including any rerolls, you can retain one of your fails as a normal success instead of discarding it. And I think beforehand, was it just rerolls? I mean, if you roll 2 or fails, you can. Oh, okay, yeah. So before, it was if you roll 2 fails, you can re-roll it, and now it's just if you roll 2 fails, you can retain it, like Indomitable. So that's a nice little change, I think. I always prefer it when it's like a guaranteed retain over like a reroll. But they have a Troupe save, but like even then, I just think generically, I think having that like ability to say, yeah, I'm going to just, I roll really poorly, but I'm at least getting a save here, or I'm at least getting 2 saves here is nice. They changed the wave crest rule, which is, it used to be it was when an attack dice inflicts 4 or more damage, you ignore the inflicted damage. But now it's just normal damage rather than crit damage. So, like all the changes to Just a Scratch, it's now only affecting normal. But the benefit is it can work on damage less than 4, and it also means that you can choose when to apply it. So before, it used to be the first time it happened, when it's 4 or more, you had to do it. But now it's just you can wait out and see, but it doesn't work versus crits. So in some ways it's better, in some ways it's worse. Being able to, as I said, like block crits was really good, particularly as crits often had a lot of damage coming through, like 6 damage, whatever. Being able to turn that off is nice. But this works out probably more impactful most of the time, because if you're playing a team that has like low normal damage, you can just say, like, if you took 3, 3, and 3, for instance, that would kill you normally. You can say, no, I'm going to actually ignore 3 damage and survive. The Dozer gets a damage reduction, which is is nice. I think Dozer was like kind of a niche, like a niche pick. Like you would take them sometimes, but not all the time, and now they're just a better pick. And just going to be a little bit more durable, which is good to see. And then the one that I think is really big is the Kinlink, essentially getting the range reduction removed from their comms ability. So now they're able to just say, I'm going to be able to give APL out to anyone in the kill zone, and that to me I think is really big because they can sort of like sit at the back and do the system jam and the comms link, and now they can be in a position where they're not constantly trying to move to find the range to do stuff. So you don't have to expose your comms, you're just able to just be handing them out. Really impactful on ITD because you can have your comms in a different room, holding onto your home objective, just sat on objective, looting it and doing whatever, whilst handing out APL across the board. Really, really big. So like Kasrkin have loved the fact that their comms can do this. The fact that the Kinlink can do it now is awesome. So a great set of buffs generically for Hearthkyn Salvagers. I think they're going to do well, and I think with the nerfs that have gone on as well, I think they're in a good place. Like this was a team that was a little bit behind, that now I think could potentially shoot up and be competing for those top spots. Into Hernkyn Yaegir, the main changes here is essentially you are able to get more resourceful points, you're able to get resourceful points easier, but you also can fall back, then buff your APL, and then do something else. So one of the things that you couldn't do previously was gain resourceful points if you were in control range, but now it's before or after it performs an action. If it's not within control range, you can use this rule. If you do add one to its APL, which means that you can do things like if you get charged, you can fall back, buff its APL, shoot, do a mission action, whatever you need to do. Which is a nice little change for the Jaegers. That should help them out because just charging and sitting in combat with them was really frustrating to them. If you particularly good at melee, you could just be like, well, I've already injured you, whatever. I'll charge to sit next to you and you can't get away from this. Or if you do, you're wasting your activation, which they didn't like. So that's a pretty good little change for Jaegers. Okay, and then into Hierotek Circle, they received actually a whole bunch of nerfs, which is, I think, actually really impactful to the way the team's going to play. So, to go through them now, so firstly starting with Magnify. So those who don't know, it used to be that your Cryptek needed to see your model, your friendly model, and then that model would shoot the other model essentially. So the Cryptek could shoot around corners, not see visibility or anything like that, and also they could essentially do it within engagement range because you could shoot a model that was in engagement range with that other model. You can't do that now. So now the target has to be both visible to the Cryptek or the Apprentek, or the other models. Sorry, and the other model. So both the person that you're shooting with and the Cryptek have to be able to see the model that you're shooting, which means you can't do these crazy shots on ITD around corners. Additionally, it's the model that you're shooting with has to be valid for that action's shoot conditions. Therefore, you can't shoot within engagement range. So two nerfs to the way Magnify work, which is going to be impactful, particularly as I said on ITD, in my opinion. Then a huge change to the way the kill-op works. So treat the way the Hierotek Circle, basically, they're not 8 options anymore, they count as being 5, and then the reanimate still functions, but you can't reactively change your opponent's attack op score from reanimated operatives. So this means that if you kill 5 operatives over the course of the game, which is achievable, you're going to get a max kill op, which is pretty good, and it means that reanimation that's constantly happening is going to be less impactful against you, and it means that also the way that they've ruled it here means that if you kill someone with a dominate, you get a token. If they revive and then you kill them again, I think you get a second token, and they can't change that by them being revived, so you're not going to lose any of those points, which is pretty cool. So that's a significant nerf to their reanimation protocols in the way in which we will score VP against you. Chronomancer also got hit with a nerf. So now the Chronometron only works versus shooting, so melee hordes have more of play into the team, so you're not getting -1 attack when you're fighting or retaliating against them. So for those who don't know, it was always pretty difficult. If you're a melee team, you could essentially, the Hierotek player would have a Tesla weave to do damage to you on the way in. They'd be accurate too, then you'd be -1 attack, and you just really struggle to actually be able to kill anything. Now that's gone. So melee teams, this is a buff and makes it easier for them to be able to interact with them. Death Protect took another hit just on his command action, basically saying that he can't use the bug to accelerate stuff. I'm trying to think how that really came up in interesting ways. I think the bug could accelerate him with a command action to make him count as more APL for objective control and stuff, maybe, but you can't do it anymore. And then finally, the reanimated function, for the purposes of martyrs, has no effect. So again, is quite impactful. So the way that it worked was it was a 1 CP ploy, and you would count one of your reanimated tokens as being a single APL, which then meant if you're playing martyrs, one of your models would die, it would drop a token, and unless your opponent moves someone onto that objective to contest it, you're going to get 2 VP, because you can spend a CP to essentially trade CP for VP, and then even if they did, you could still spend it and get 1 VP, irrespective of what your opponent did. So I think that's a good change, because it was a bit uninteractive, which the whole sort of vibe of Approved Docs 2025 is that it's interactive for your opponent. So having a 1 CP ploy, which essentially you don't get to interact with this, hurts. That being said, Troupe and Ratlings have ploys that get around that, so in their own little ways. So maybe that's a little bit harsh, but anyway, they can't do it. These are quite a lot of nerfs. I think the main one that is going to be the most impactful to the win percentage of the team is the reanimation protocols, because if your opponent gets 4 kills, being kill grade 4 might be hard for the Hierotek Circle player to be able to get to that similar kill grade, and then you're actually going to be getting 5 points or maybe 6 points, whatever. If you get a sneaky 5th kill, that's kind of huge, and I think that's going to be the most impactful change here. The rest are matchups and map specific, how it's going to change things, but this, like the kill op one, is going to be one that's impactful all the time. Okay. Next one to Kasrkin, the boys that I love, who have been struggling for a while, and they have received some love. So let's talk through it, and I'll tell you if it's going to be enough or not. So firstly, the Siege Initiative ploy. So previously this was at the end of the firefight phase, you can spend a CP, and in the subsequent initiative phase you can re-roll your initiative dice, or force your opponent to re-roll their initiative dice. That's now gone, and instead it's been replaced with, in the firefight phase, one friendly Kasrkin can immediately perform. So at the start, one friendly Kasrkin can immediately perform a free 1 AP action for free, but it cannot move during that action. You cannot use this ploy if you're the player with initiative. So I think that this is actually a really nice buff for the team, because they struggled with their APL efficiency, and they, in my opinion, just generically, they were not being able to get double kills or guarantee the use out of the weapons, and against a lot of teams they need to guarantee their use. So this means that against an elite team, you can move a melter gun up, you can shoot someone. If they live, you can spend a CP irrespective of what happens on initiative, and you can guarantee that you kill that model, or hopefully kill that model, with your weapons as well, which is a pretty cool ability to do. There's some other cool things that I think is interesting for this. So the way that this firefight ploy works, you can't move, but you can do the relocate move. So you can move during the strat phase 3 inches and then do a free action with a model. So you might find that you're able to do some interesting stuff with that. And note that also, if you have your sniper with the silent profile still active, you might be able to do a shoot with the sniper, which I think again could be pretty cool. So I think there's some interesting plays here which it opens up, and I think that's going to be really good for how the team plays in general. So yeah, I think this is a good change for the team. Next, neutralize target now works against any operative, ready or expended. So they've removed that. So they removed that caveat of having it having to be expended. So now it's just not in cover or being scanned, which is way easier to be able to achieve and means that you can get those rerolls when you need them, which is really nice. I'm pretty sure it's just relentless, right? Yeah. So now, like essentially, if you're being aggressive with your melter gun and you roll really poorly, and you're within 2 inches, you can just reroll everything, which is great. So a bit of reliability there. The cover retreat's got a buff, which is really good because it was really niche point beforehand, and now it's usable against melee teams, which is essentially if you do a fallback and you have a friendly model within 6 inches, it doesn't have to be a ready model anymore. You can change that model's order if you need to, and then do a free shoot action. So let's say in the strat phase, a Goremonger has charged your melter gun dude who's in the middle. Well, actually now he can fall back and someone else can shoot that Goremonger and potentially do some damage. And then if you had 3 APL, you can then shoot with the melter gun and maybe get a kill. So that's like a really nice little combo that you can do, which you're going to be able to help people out. And then finally, the faction equipment Relics Arcadia also now works when fighting or retaliating, which means that if you need to go in and finish someone off with a bit of a fisticuff, you can guarantee that you get the result that you need, which is nice as well. So all of these changes are good. They're all good buffs. They like the fact that all the other teams are getting nerfs. I don't know if it's going to be enough still. I still think like the Goremonger matchup is horrible. I still think the Fellgor matchup is horrible. Things like the cover retreat is reliant on A, that you can fall back and there's teams out there that can just deny you from falling back. B, that you've survived a melee with whatever operative has come and attacked you. Also seems unlikely. But the big change here, I think, is the Siege Initiative ploy. I love this change. I think it's a fantastic change. Whoever thought of this, genius. I like it. Should be cool. I should also just caveat it: you can't use deploy if you have initiative. So it's literally Siege Initiative. You can't be like, oh, I'm going to Siege Initiative and then also do something on top of that. So it's just a pretty cool little way of showing off the Kasrkin ability. I still think they need the ability to double kill a bit more, in my opinion. But this is the Siege Initiative is a route to double killing, which is nice. And the rest is as well. So the cover retreat is a route towards it, but your opponent has to be compliant. You're getting more reliability, so through both of the Relics Arcadia and the neutralized target. So more reliability, a bit more double killing. They're getting there. I don't know if they're there yet, but they're at least on the right direction. Hopefully in the next balance state after this one, they get a little bit more love and they're good to go. Maybe I'm wrong, but Kasrkin players, is this enough? If you think it is, and I'm downplaying it, maybe I probably need to get on the table and actually see how they play. Right, that's probably the fairest way of doing it. Okay, Kommandos, bunch of changes here. I'll go through it. So the big chopper up to 5 attacks from 4, but it loses punishing. So fine, I guess. Kind of useful. I'm not too sure how much that changes things, if I'm honest. The Power Claw gains shock, which is nice, although I'm not too sure if you were... I don't know how often that was coming up to be useful, but maybe that's wrong. I'm pretty sure the Power Claw is brutal, so if people are going to parry you out, then he crits anyway, and shock doesn't get rid of the crit unless there are no other results. So I don't know, like some changes to the boss knob loadout there. This though is big. Crump in time. This optic can perform 2 fight actions during its activation. That's just great. Like that's going to be a great way of just essentially getting more value out of your boss. He's already 3 APL. He's going to be able to go in, double charge, and potentially get 2 people, which is really nice. So more attacks on the big chopper is probably decent most of the time. I mean, it is 5-6 damage and now 5 attacks. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. And then the other one is now 4 attacks, 5-7 brutal shock. But I think you probably just run the big chopper now. I don't know when the 5/7 becomes so impactful. The brutal is nice, don't get me wrong, but maybe big choppers with just more attack dice is more reliable now, and having 2 fight actions is really good. So the boss knob is just going to be a bit more of a boss, which is cool to see. They've increased the short range on the Daka Boy from 6 to 9, so just a little bit more flexibility on his range, which is nice. And then the faction equipment collapsible stocks has been changed. I'll just check to see what it was previously to make sure I don't get it wrong. That's the wrong thing. Faction equipment collapsible stocks. It used to be add 4 inches to the range of the following weapons, and now you just remove the range restriction, so they get more long range weapons. I don't know if long range shooting was a thing Commandos needed. In my opinion, I don't think it was. I think they needed help in killing elites. I think the way the boss changes have come about, it will achieve that. So being base damage 5 with 5 attacks and having 2 fight actions should mean that he reliably kills an elite. Getting extra range on their guns, I'm not too sure if that's going to change things. Maybe that's just me, but from the Commando players I talked to, I think they were more after like a bit of AP and stuff to be able to punch through elites. But what do you guys think? Like, is that have I read that wrong? Do you think that actually the range restrictions were too difficult to work around before, and now you're going to be taking this equipment more often to be able to get some long range shooting, noting that the short range on the Daka shooter isn't affected? Okay, the Legionaries have taken a hit. Essentially the mutability and change, Fireflight Poi, you gain 1 APL, but you can't perform the same action more than once during that activation. So this means that you can't do things like operate hatch, move, shoot. You can only get 1 shoot action off. So you have to be a little bit more interesting in like how you use it, and it means that you're not potentially getting the crazy combos where you shoot, charge, fight, whatever, and you get 3 kills. You're not going to be able to get that level of killing potential off of that change. I didn't think Legionary were doing that well, to be honest. So I'm surprised to see that they got nerfed with this. But maybe they were doing well somewhere. But they seem to be just holding their own just about. So I am surprised to see that Nemesis Claw got hit. Sorry, that Legionary got hit. I thought they were already struggling a little bit, but maybe that's just me. And then Nemesis Claw, which is the next team, have got hit, and it's their Vox Scream that's been hit. And it's been nerfed in 2 separate ways, and then buffed in a slightly different way. But the nerf is essentially you now have to be visible to a Nemesis Claw operative. That's huge, because if you're not visible to Nemesis Claw operative, they can't use this against you. So if you're hiding behind like a hatchway on ITD or something like this, where I see it happening the most, they're not going to be able to use Vox Scream against you, and that's often a key defensive ability for them. So for like the elite mirrors on ITD, that's a huge change. You can use doors to really effectively deny Vox Scream, and then even if they can see you, they still have to now roll a d6, and they have to get higher than your enemy's operative's APL. So it's a 50-50. They have to roll a 4, 5, or a 6 against elites, or they have to roll a 3, 4, 5, or 6 against 2 APL teams to be able to then deny that operative activating. So it's gone from being a guaranteed thing that they can do anywhere all the time to you have to be visible, so you have counterplay, and it has a variable to it, which is you have to roll a d6. Huge, in my opinion. Huge nerf, like massive nerf to Vox Scream, and gives your opponent way more counterplay against you. So that's significant. The buff that it got is that it now doesn't cost you extra CP, and you only pay the CP if it's successful. So before, each time you use it, it got more expensive. So genuinely, people would get away with like 2 Vox Screams a game. They would do 1 for 1 CP and then 1 for 2 CP, and then it would become too expensive. But it was guaranteed, and it was anywhere on the board wherever you needed it. Whereas now it's not. You have to be visible. You have to roll that d6, but it's only costing you 1 CP. I think it's quite a big nerf. I think that's going to hurt Nemesis Claw players, in my opinion. I think that's going to be pretty painful for them. So interesting to see how that shakes out. Ratlings, some great buffs here. So, firstly, Scarper. So that's the faction rule, which essentially lets them dash after each of your opponent's activations. It used to be they had to do it every other activation. Now they just get to do it after each one. So loads more movement for the team, which is great. So it also is easier for them to track, but it just means that they always have the option to be able to move people around. Huge. So that's a straight up great buff. Next, the faction equipment, Purloined Rations, is now, once you've rolled your attack dice, you can see what your results are. So let's say you roll loads of 2s, you can say, okay, I'm now improving my hit stat by 1 to make it more hit, which is again a great little benefit, because before having to declare it before you rolled, like it's sometimes it came up, sometimes it doesn't. This is a massive reliability buff, because now you know I'm spending this faction equipment and I can see right now how many additional hits I'm going to get without doing my rerolls. So that's pretty big. The Raider and the Sneak, their weapons have been improved to gain Devastating 2 over Devastating 1. That becomes even more impressive, or impactful I should say, but impressive as well, noting that Sneak now has also gained Lethal 5 on their stationary profile. So 3/3 Dev 2, Lethal 5, Ignore Obscurity is really nice. So the Sneak now can put out some real damage. That sort of Splinter Cell Sneak operative is really good. And the Raider has also got a buff, which is really impactful in my opinion on ITD and Tomb World. So now you just select a terrain feature within 6 with this operative, and then you remove that operative and then place it back up within 6 inches of that terrain feature. That is before you had to measure the height of buildings, and then you figured out how far you could go based on how far you could slingshot off of the building, and you couldn't really do it on ITD. Now clearly you can be right at the back of a room within 6 inches of a barricade. You can slingshot to that barricade and then go a further 6 inches. It gives you huge movement potential, and then you've also got a more devastating gun to boot. So all of those buffs are nice, and I think they could do really well with the new crit ops. I think they've got some great synergy with infiltration. I think the way that the model can move now, it means that it's even easier to play like Plant Banner with them and that sort of stuff. So and Envoy as well, because you have the Scarper movements as well. So the combination of like additional movement from Scarper, the slingshot being more maneuverable, you got a bit more damage output there, you got a bit more reliability output there. I think those are all really consistent buffs that hopefully help Ratlings perform even better. So I think Ratlings could be on the way up. I think they're good personally. Maybe I'm missing something, but I think they could be good. And also the fact that clearly they're enjoying the fact that everyone else is getting nerfed. Always a buff. For Raveners then, they've taken some hits as well. So the Prime Operative, the CP generation, now requires you to roll twice as high or higher to gain your CP, and equal therefore does nothing. So essentially, like if you're in turning point 1, you need to roll a 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. And if you roll less than that, nothing happens. Less, you inflict damage equal to the result. But on turning point 2, you now need to roll, instead of a 4, so it would be on turning point 1, you need to roll a 2. On turning point 2, you need to roll a 4. And then on turning point 3, you need to roll a 6. So I don't think you're going to try and gain it later on. I think this now essentially means that you just get +1 CP, because you're probably not going to want to try it too much on later turning points. Maybe that's just me, because you take quite a lot of damage from it. The biggest change, though, in my opinion, to Raveners, and this one is huge, is the Writhe Out of Sight ploy. So I always made a joke of Writhe into sight versus Writhe Out of sight. Now it is only Writhe Out of Sight. So you have to select a friendly operative in the kill zone, and then they get to do this ability. So it's now as it is intended thematically, i.e. you go back into your tunnel and disappear. rather than pop out of the tunnel and then like ambush charge forwards. That I think is huge because that changes like so many different things. So yeah, I think that is a fundamentally huge nerf to the way a lot of players play that team and how you counter that team. So Ravenous players, like, what's your thoughts on that? Am I reacting? Do I think that is? Am I being too like crazy on that? But in my opinion, that is massive. So yeah, interested to hear your thoughts. I think that's a significant change. And then just they've tidied up that the tunnels can work in Killzone Tomb World as well as Gallo Dark, which makes perfect sense. So yeah, cool. That's it on Ravenous. Yeah, it's not huge. Well, the CP thing's going to hurt. They basically always went into turning point 3 on like 7 CP or whatever it was, and they had the CP available for CP rerolls, which helped their reliability. That's now gone, and they also can't do the if I get initiative on turning point 2, I'm going to move my tunnel marker 5 inches forwards. I'm going to put a Ravener at the end of my tunnel marker, and then going to charge 9 inches to my first activation and get a double kill, which was clearly like wild to be able to deal with. They now can't do that, which is a big nerf in my opinion. Sanctifiers, holy, they are taking some hits. I kind of wish these hits had come out when I was playing Phobos and having to deal with Sanctifiers, but I'm happy to see them in a weird way. Is this too much though? Do we think that they're going to be dead? The Sanctifier players that like I've seen think that they're still okay. They just have some bad matchups, but they're probably still playable. But they just don't feel crazy now. So starting with the Sermon, normal and crit damage of 4 or more inflicts 1 less damage. So that's a big change because a lot of their models, they were able to get that damage reduction down to the point at which like bolt guns became las guns and that sort of stuff, and you just weren't able to get the damage through and kill stuff. Whereas now, low level damage for those sorts of teams is effective again. So if you're doing 3/3 damage, if you're playing Crew or something like this, you're now going to have a much better time dealing with Sanctifiers than you did previously. So this is good news for you if you have a lot of 3/3 damage weapons. Rally the Flock. You now need to be closer and visible to, or vice versa, to the Orator. You can't move and hide away. That's going to be interesting, I guess. I don't know if that changes too much on the Rally the Flock. How often were people moving it so they weren't visible? I guess maybe that did come up, but we'll see. Like I'm not 100% sure on that one. And then Ecclesiarchy Text. This is actually quite big. So 3d6 versus 2d6. So now you're on average getting it, but you're not like guaranteed to get CP generation. So it seems broadly that everyone is getting hit on their CP generation, so you're not going to get quite as much as you were or as you did previously. So probably a good change in my opinion. The lead the procession rule also has this same, it needs to be visible to the sermon. So again, like you can't move someone that's going to be miles away the other side of the board and not be visible. So that is actually really big for the missionaries, because I think the missionaries would just run away on their own, but now they need to be able to see the Orator, which will be big actually. Yeah, I think that's actually quite a significant nerf. More so than I gave it credit for when I first read it, because I think the missionaries are going to now struggle with that. So that's kind of big. Then the icon control down to 4 inches. Again, I thought this is the same as it is for Brew Brothers. I don't think that's going to be too impactful. You just now have to sort of choose an objective, whereas before you could just get both. So now you have to make a bit more of a choice if you're taking this operative, which I think is fine. The Drill Abbot going down to 4 inches is good, because there's certain teams that really impacted and hurt, and it being 6 inches was a huge aura. So now the fact that that's gone down is actually pretty impactful. So yeah, that's a good enough. That's going to come up more than you think. And then Preacher needs to control an Optive marker to be able to get their benefit. And they're a 2 APL model, so they're going to have damage reduction in Sermon way less than they do now. So before, they used to have to go on objective marker. Now they have to control that objective marker. So that's big. And against elite teams in particular, this team struggles against, they always struggle to be able to control objective markers. So you have to like double bodies on to be able to then get the damage reduction. I don't know if you want to do that or not. So that's a big change. And then the conversion field rule has also been nerfed. So now you don't get the remove piercing one. So the combination of these nerfs is huge, like absolutely huge. They're less mobile essentially on their sermons. They have less damage reduction. They have less objective control, objective presence. They have less ability to reduce your APL and interact with you, and they're going to get less CP. I think that is like nail in the coffin for Sanctifiers for a little bit. I think they will drop to like 45% win rate. They weren't particularly popular at the moment, as is, because I think a lot of top players were jumping off them because of some of the elite matchups anyway. And now with all of those hits, I think that's it. And to be fair, I think they did need it. Like we saw it at like the WTC. Every team was running Sanctifiers. They were really strong. Now they're just going to be, I think, one of those middle of the pack sort of teams, like lower middle teams. Maybe they need like a little bit of a touch up in future, but I think that's going to be enough. But that is probably the most significant set of nerfs within this balanced data slate, in my opinion. Onto Scout Squad then. So they've just basically made the team a bit more CP efficient by combining gunfire ambush and blade ambush into a single ambush ploy, which means you get all your rerolls from a single CP, which is nice. They then added a new ploy to be able to change your D3 orders of models, which I don't know how often that comes up, to be honest. It's, I guess, nice-ish. But I don't know how impactful it will be. But they've also meant the stealth relocation can now do D3 friendly optives, which again is actually pretty nice, but you can't change the order. So the stealth relocation and adaptable training has got less CP efficient in a way, but you get more optives. But I think most of the time people were just doing either the movement or the order change. When you're doing both, it usually seemed a bit odd. So now you have to choose, and the sniper, which is a nice change from leave ability, now has heavy dash, which is great. So more CP efficient in some aspects, less in others, but more movement and the ability to change more models is cool. Again, World according to Ryan, the one thing that I think they need still is APL efficiency. I don't think this is going to give them that. I think it gives them some cool things, like being able to do the stealth relocation to move your sniper 3 inches, then do a dash 3 inches so they move 6 and then shoot is nice. But I just think that they need just a little bit more, like just a little bit more APL to be able to do the double shoot and kill elites, is my opinion. We'll see. Maybe for the Scout Squad players that are out there, like, has this changed your bad matchups? Personally, I think the matchups they've been struggling into, this doesn't change that. This probably just helps them with the matchups that they're already okay with. World according to Ryan. But what do you guys think? Am I reading it wrong? Who knows? Voidance Troupe. These guys, quite a few nerfs actually. Seek going to Seek Light on the Hallucinant Grenade does come up quite a lot. So usually, particularly for like elite player, the Hallucinant Grenade can sort of threaten a huge area, and because it's Blast 2 with that full Seek and the stun, it was always difficult if you're playing against that. And the other teams that really didn't like it are teams like Fellgor Ravagers, which this team already struggled into. So that's going to make that matchup even worse, in my opinion, because now they can move up, get into heavy cover, and you can't use that long range Seek. So that wasn't like, I was surprised to see that bit get nerfed, but makes sense. The curtain falls is exactly the same as the nerf to Blades of Khaine. Makes sense. So no more to add on that one. The lead player and player operatives, their blade weapon has now gone to 4/6, but loses severe. Now, like the chance of you rolling a crit on 5 dice is pretty good, particularly if you have the reroll, which means that maybe you actually do consider taking the reroll on fighting now, just to make it more likely for you to proc that crit. The good benefit of getting that damage buff is you're now like able to do a bit more damage, which means the breakpoints work better, which means you're more likely to be able to kill 14 wound models, which is cool. The downside is that you can't guarantee and have a safety net off curtain falls, because you know that you're going to, whatever happens, like get a crit, and you can always fall back if you roll terribly. Like even if you just roll even if you roll no hits, you could use your purity seals, but they're called talismans. You can use your talismans to be able to say, yeah, I've now got a hit, I have severe, that becomes a crit, and I'm going to strike you and leave. You don't have that safety net anymore. So they become more swingy, but they become more damagey as a result, which, yeah, like kind of interesting how that's going to go. I don't think it affects like Goremonger matchup at all because of the way the Gory Tenacity works. So interesting. The other nerf that they've received is the way their Panoply works. So now it used to just be you ignore piercing altogether, but now it's and no attack dice are retained as critical successes, worse than the piercing the weapon by 1. No, the piercing the 1 would therefore be ignored. So piercing 2 always does some piercing, which is nice, and that effect only happens if you roll a crit. This, I think, is the change that maybe should have happened to smoke grenades, and I actually really like it. It's like if you don't retain any crits, reduce to piercing, it's probably something that generally people can put onto a lot of their stuff. So I think that Aegis could probably get this. So if you don't get a crit against the Aegis, then they reduce your piercing by 1. I think would be pretty fair, because like, if you imagine like they're supposed to be super mobile and that sort of stuff, but the critical hit means even though they've done that, you've actually managed to hit them directly like where it hurts. Same for a Storm Shield. You know, they're blocking a lot of their body, but maybe you've managed to get a shot just around the corner of it and get through to the squishy meaty stuff behind, and therefore it makes sense that because you scored a critical hit, it's gone through. So I like that change. I like that nerf. They're now more fragile. They have slightly more damage in ways, but they are less reliable, and as a result, they are playing more into what Void Dancers always were, which is a glass cannon that's like can go crazy with. We're almost towards the end, so you also can't use the player ability more than once per turning point, but I think that's where everyone was playing it anyway. Warpcoven lost an operative, huge change. Benefit though is the sorcerers gain an extra wound. This is useful because it always confused the heck out of people when essentially like who's your leader? This guy, that person has 1 extra wound. It can just catch people out. It's just better just to have 15 wounds, because like I always ran the same guy, the flying guy, as the leader, but like people don't know. They all look the same, right? So like when they go into combat and they find out halfway through it can be a feels bad, or they go, oh, actually this guy's got 1 extra wound. So oh, of course, brilliant. Yeah, that's kind of cool. Extra wound. Losing an operative though is big, really big, and you can't have 2 gunners anymore. So you're pretty much always going to be taking Zangors now. I think you need to, and I think that's going to put them down into like the middle of the pack sort of territory now. Like I don't think they're not a top dog team anymore. I don't think, which is fine because they're moving out of rotation. But from the games that I had, like if I lost an operative from the start of the game, I think that would be really impactful. Like really impactful every game, particularly against like the Elven teams. So yeah, I think that's a significant nerf, and yeah, like that's all I can say about it. Really, they're going to be probably not seen at many top tables, in my opinion. Maybe I'm being overly harsh. Warpcoven mains, what do you think? Am I being too harsh? I personally don't think I would see myself taking them to tournaments. Wrecka Krew, they have got some nice glow ups, which is cool. So the big one here is the way tanked up works. So the first time a friendly Wrecka operative, excluding bomb squid, that has an engaged order performs either the charge, shoot, or fight action excluding guard during each of its activations/counter actions, add 1 to its APL stat. This is cool, right? So the few benefits here is, one is it works off a charge, and then you keep that essentially for the rest of your time playing. This massively helps them get around on ITD. They can now open a door, they can charge, and they can fight you. As a quality of life buff goes for orcs, this is incredible. It's amazing. So I think there's going to be a whole bunch of very happy Wrecka players, because now they're going to even out on their ability to play between essentially both ITD and open board, and it's going to feel a little bit more consistent between the two. So I think that's a big buff to the way that the team plays. The other change that they have is to extra armor. So subtract 1 from the move stat and improve their save stat by 1. This excludes bomb sculptives and isn't cumulative protective rule or the portal barricade from universal equipment. So the way it was before is you added 1 to their wound stat, and now they're getting +1 save instead. I don't know how impactful that is. I'm trying to think. So they're 12 wounds base, and now they're going to go up to 3 up save instead of 4 up save. I'm like 50-50 on that. Like, against melee teams, this is going to do nothing for you, and the -1 move is pretty significant. Whereas I think there was times where having an extra wound might have helped you on breakpoints. I don't know. Like that. Yeah. That being said, having 3 up saves is nice. So maybe that is good. Yeah, 50-50. I don't know if that's a buff or a nerf. Kind of like a side grade, maybe. Maybe overall it's a buff. Like 3 up saves is nice. Like 3 up saves is a good save characteristic. So if you're getting shot to death a lot, that's going to help. But against some of the heavy hitting melee teams, I think it's going to do too much. Cool. So that's Wrecka Krew. I think they're going to see a rise in popularity. I think it'll be much easier to play. You can play them better on both kill zones, and I think they're going to do well into the meta based on there being a lot of elite teams that they can do a lot of damage to. Their issue will remain, as always, the ability to gain 6s and have Wrecka points and just be that casino team. A few other bits of erratas then, which we'll just cover off now, and then we're done. The teleport pad, additional text, equipment, terrain features cannot be set within 2 inches of a teleport pad. Whenever an operative's base is touching a teleport pad, if another operative is on the teleport pad, those operatives treat as being within control range, which makes sense. So if you're touching a control pad and someone turns up on it, you're then within control range, and you can't put any terrain features like on the pads or near the pads to block people from being able to use them. Cool, makes sense. And then the approved ops changes. So this map obviously is now changed to be correct with the correct color coding as well, I believe, or not. No, we're not quite correct color coding, but at least it's now playable, which is nice. And the security tackle martyrs, add this to the paragraph. Note that this is only the first time each operative is incapacitated, so if an operative is incapacitated, set back up, e.g. Hierotek Circle and random protocols, and then subsequently incapacitated again, a second master token cannot be gained as a result. So it stops you spamming those abilities. Again, that really just affects Hierotek Circle, as far as I'm aware. I don't think someone else that comes back, so it just really affects them. So that is what we're expecting to come out at the Balanced Data Slate in a few weeks' time, and it will be the case for the rules for the World Championship of Warhammer. There might be a few more errata bits that they add in, probably, and rule clarifications for stuff that come up. but this is broadly what we're expecting, I think, for the balanced data slate. This for me is a much better balanced data slate than the last one. I think it's done a huge amount of work to shake up the meta. It's buffed a whole bunch of teams that are at the bottom. So just in general, scouts have been buffed, wreckers have been buffed, ratlings have been buffed, Kommandos have been buffed, Kasrkin have been buffed, Jaegers have been buffed, Salvagers have been buffed, Hand of the Archon has been buffed, and Exaction Squad has been buffed. Then, and Blooded. Sorry, I forgot about Blooded. And Angels of Death. Then Blades of Khaine nerfed. They were at the top of the meta. Brew Brothers nerfed. They were at the top of the meta. Canoptek Circle nerfed. They were at the top of the meta. DeathWatch nerfed. They were at the top of the meta. Fellgor Ravagers nerfed. They were at the top of the meta. Gellerpox Infected nerfed. They were at the top of the meta. Goremongers nerfed. They weren't at the top of the meta, but they were a polarizing team. So they're like the odd outlier when it comes to stats. And then Hierotek Circle taking a big nerf, which I think is valid. I know some communities don't agree, but I think it is personally. They were at the top of the meta, and Legionary, Nemclaw, Raveners, Sanctifiers, Void Dancer Troupe, and Warpcoven all taking nerfs, and they were all meta-like defining teams. So I think it's going to shake up the meta in a huge way, and what comes next after this balanced data slate is a very fresh new season with loads of changes. So I'm excited to get playing into it. Hopefully you're excited to get playing into it too. Follow along for the World Championships, see what's going on, see how the top players are playing those teams with the new changes, and use that to inform your team choice and team selection, and then keep up to date with the meta watch that I do weekly to be able to see hopefully how this unfolds. I sort of made some predictions there. I'll try and do a tier list in the next couple of weeks where I think the various teams are going to end up as the new meta shakes out, but I'm going to have to rely on some experience from some other people to do that, because there's so much change going on that I need that feedback loop. Otherwise it's just an echo chamber of me, and I look at it through the lens of DeathWatch only. So I need some other people to be able to tell me what other teams think of other things. So hope that's helpful. As I said, there's some more content on the way soon, but I wanted to get this out whilst it was still fresh and discuss what I think is going to be one of the most impactful changes to the Killteam game in the next few months. So awesome to see that it's come out. Awesome to see hopefully there's people engaging with it, and hopefully we'll get to throw some dice soon, and I'll see you on the tabletop. Take it easy. Have a great time at the World Championships for those that are going. See you later.
That brings us to the end of the episode. Hopefully you found something new or useful while listening, and if you did, throwing us a like would be greatly appreciated. If you want to make sure you don't miss any episodes, make sure you hit that subscribe button and click on the bell so you get notifications as soon as the next one drops. It really is the best way to help a small channel like ours. And if you can't wait and you do want early access, we have a Patreon where you can get exclusive access to all our content ahead of time. As always, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Just drop a comment below and we'll get right to you. Thank you so much for listening. I'm your host Ryan, this has been Turning Point Tactics, and we'll see you next week.